Alrighty. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to AMSOZ TCR Australia 2020 Round 4 from the
Alrighty.
Bend Motorsport Park. This is
Good,
the first
good
time
evening, everybody.
we've come down
Welcome
to the
to
Bend
AMSOZ
this year.
TCR
It's actually the
Australia
first time
2020 Round
AMSOZ
4
Australia has been to
from
the Bend,
the Bend
but we'll
Motorsport
be
Park.
there
Good,
later in the year
good evening,
for
everybody.
Super
We've come
2, I
down
believe,
to
as
the
well
Bend
as Super
AMSOZ
Cars.
TCR Australia 2020
This is not
Round
Lewis.
4
This
from the
is
Bend
Rhodey.
Motorsport
Lewis
Park.
will be
Good,
back with us
good
in a
evening,
moment.
everybody. We've come
And we
down
are
to the
just
Bend
getting,
AMSOZ
we're
TCR
not
Australia
far
2020
away from
Round
getting
4
into
from
qualifying
the
for this
Bend
race.
Motorsport
Obviously,
Park.
it's a hot lap shootout, as we normally in TCR. Couple of new drivers, couple of drivers who actually have signed up who we haven't seen before. One Mitch, one of the drivers who have signed up for this series. I'll have to actually have a look at what you guys see as the stream, because obviously I'm not managing the stream. You're not seeing anything? Okay. In that case, yeah, when we see it, Lime's one of the new drivers we've got out there tonight. He's obviously in the lime green number 13 Audi. And we've also got Daniel Zanella out there in the Renault yellow car. He's actually, I believe, got a livery on the way. He's running under the VZ Motorsport banner in the number 05, which we're used to seeing, I believe, with Will Devonish in supercars.
Certainly so. So I've made it back from my little adventure. Qualifying has got underway, as you can see on our screen. Thank you for Rhodey for bringing us in. Obviously, Rhodey, first time around here in Automobilist Australia. What have you seen out there in practice that has caught your eye?
Look, I got in late. This whole world pandemic is doing weird things, and I've started binge watching TV of all things. But we did have one more driver from what we're seeing at the moment. Liam Spencer did actually jump in for practice. He wasn't too bad on pace. He was eighth fastest overall, but just couldn't quite get the handle on the way these things drive. But look, aside from that, pretty standard grid numbers here. It's good. It means the numbers are a little manageable. We haven't experienced the entrant blowout that we've had in every other series. Which, good and bad things. That there's a bit more manageable in commentary, but with more numbers, there's always chance for more action on track.
Certainly. So, just having a look at the moment. 13 cars in the server at the moment. The fastest lap that we saw in practice was a 2:02.4 by yours truly. But 2:02.6 is the fastest time that Duane Davies was able to set. Having a look at the fastest sector though, all the fastest, I should say, sectors. I think the fastest time that could be managed was a very low 2:02, sort of 1 or even a 0 if a driver got it together. But as you see, Foley will be the first one. Normally the FCR cars, the last ones to go out there and set a lap time. But this time they're going to be the first two. Duane Davies just further down the road. You can see that bright green of Lime Mitch as well. One of the most important parts of this circuit here, turn 1 here. Very easy to outbrake yourself. It's also very easy to get a track cut on the inside there. So see, I think that's Brendan Ross that's run wide.
That is Brendan Ross. Yep. And I was going to say, it's a very easy corner to run wide in because there's just a sea of tarmac past the edge of the racetrack. It's very hard to spot your braking point. But yes, he bowled well clear the apex there, Rossi, and I don't think he'll be happy with that one.
Yeah, and this little flip-flop here, you can run wide on the exit. I think we'll start to see that in the race when the tyres get a little bit more worn out. Very easy to run wide and get on the power too early here at the hairpin. As you see Foley now across the line, 44.43. Just trying to find what the optimal fastest first sector is, and that is actually half a second faster than what Duane Davies managed on his personal fastest lap. So we could see a very, very quick lap here. Duane Davies 44.6 in the first sector, quite handy as well. But at the moment, advantage Foley. So he's gone through one of my favourite parts of the circuit, the triple right-hander. Not as much fun in a TCR car compared to a GT car, but it's certainly very, very fun to get through there, especially when you get it right. Don't want to run too wide here. Also don't want to get on the power too early. You want to set up the exit in these front-wheel drive cars. He's done that quite nicely. Now the final two corners. And Duane Davies in the background has actually got past Brendan Ross after Ross's lap. Davies fastest in the middle sector by 0.3 of a second. So it's going to be very, very tight between those guys. It's going to come down to the final sector here. Nice final couple corners for Foley, and he approaches the line. And a 202 dead for Foley. And now it's Davies' turn. What can he manage? Will we see our first 201? No. So he's lost out in the final sector, but nothing between. I've had Brendan Ross actually bin it in the pit entry there. So obviously he picked up a track cut. Not too happy with that one. Line Mitch over the line. And that's a 206 7 for him. Not ideal. But still set a lap time at least. Wayne, 204.7. That's a fair ways off his fastest lap in practice. Good 2 seconds off there, Rody.
Yeah, Daniel Zanella just crossed the line there with 208, I believe. He's probably run it wide somewhere at some point, although he is a debutant to the series. And as we discussed a little earlier, these cars can be a bit of a challenge to get your hands on initially. But 208 there for Daniel Zanella. I believe the next car to set a lap is going to be Cracker.
You've got Cracker and then Miles immediately behind him as well. Cracker, it's not going to be a good lap. He's already at the pit lane entry and it's at a 205 mark, so not an ideal lap. But he joined late in practice. He goes provisionally P6. Miles over the line goes P7 on a 209.8. And as you can see, Miles just he's in Mike Coulston's car this week, and he probably will be for the remainder of the season, as it looks like Coulston unfortunately isn't going to be able to make too many rounds in the future. And as Nether wants the team to pick up some points and get them up in the standings, they've employed the sort of the sister car driver in Miles. You see Turner all over the curb at turn 1. He's continued on, so it hasn't been a track cut, but we might ride on board the old bonnet cam or sort of roof cam here just to show a lap of this bend circuit. Also had Duncan set a lap time as well, 209.9 for him. Termo now approaching the triple right-hander. He's just exited out of the first sector. Now this bit in this TCR car, you've really got to balance the throttle. He's probably got off it just a little too much there, and it's compromised his next run. Very, very conservative. You can make up and lose a lot of time here. This left-hand bit, you can just sort of downshift, but you've got to still stay on the throttle and then be very, very patient to the right-hander on the throttle. You don't want to run too wide. You also don't want to wreck your front tyres. This next right-hand, you can go down 1 or 2 gears, but you don't want to kick the rear end out too much. Make sure you're on the throttle as soon as possible. Again, you want to set this double left-hander up nicely. You can turn in early, you can turn in late. You can take it a host of ways, but this second part of it, you definitely want to turn a little bit later and set up the exit, as you can see, because it's very easy to run wide and you can't get on the power nice and early. So turn out final 2 corners to go. You can use a little bit of curb here, which Turmo elects not to do, and that means he's a little bit late on the throttle on the exit. You want to flick down a gear. Sometimes too, use a little bit of curb on the inside, then go on the power nice and early, but he's missed that apex and it's cost him time on the exit. But that said, though, still going to be a solid time for Turmo. 2:03.8 puts him P3 in the end.
Yeah, that wasn't a bad lap. Seems a lot of drivers getting lost, I suppose, on this track, and I think turn 1 it caught a more than Rossi out there. Player drivers, though, not quite on the pace we're seeing. It's actually, I think, the biggest spread we've had in TCR so far across the times. And I think the best way to explain that is that this is, again, the first time we've been to this track. The only experienced drivers we'll have with this track is anyone who raced in the Automobilist Supercars Championship last season, where I believe we've been able to source this track from. Yep,
thankfully those guys have been able to loan us quite a number of circuits. We've changed some of the ad boards and given it some track cams, which I'll hopefully remember to send to those guys as a thank you. Bolger on a lap at the moment. Also got Gary Neville out there on the circuit as well. Bit of a slide there for Bolger, a little bit more aggressive than his teammate through the penultimate corner there. Now the final corner, and how does he attack it? A lot more confident than Turmo through the final corner, and now the run to the line. This looks like it might be an okay lap for Bolger. but not quite as good as his teammate. Good half a second away, and got Nether, I think. That's it, cross the line as well there in the background indeed. And Nether goes P3 as well, so solid lap from Nether, 2:03.7. And that's also a personal best, so good time to set it, Rhodey.
Absolutely, yeah. No better time to be setting PBs than in your qualifying session. Gary Neville's also just crossed the line there into P7 with a 2:06.55.
Certainly does, and that will put Gary Neville in P7. And that is all drivers have set a lap time, have gone out on track and aren't able to set a lap. So everybody's set a lap except for Brendan Ross, who we did see must have picked up a track cut pushing too hard next to the final corner there. But once again, Foley is continuing his resurgence in form, but Duane Davies looked quick in practice, and he's right there with him again, starting on the front row, Roadie.
Yeah, I think the biggest mystery, like it always is. We unfortunately the nature, I suppose, nature of these cars is they are early on, and it's not so it's a driver experience level. It happens to everyone. In this case, it'll be Rossi coming from the back as well, and how much he can make up in the first race. But yeah, Foley starting to get on top of these cars. We obviously saw at the start of the season he was having some issues, less so on the qualifying pace side of things. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. There was a word I was trying to use there, and I've forgotten entirely what it was.
To be fair.
But yes, that was it. Thank you. Yeah, to be fair, his issue was not really evident in qualifying. It was the pace across the length of a race session. But as we've seen recently, he's started to bring that into a more consistent level, which has obviously put him in good stead for a title defense. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see as this track goes whether fields are going to tighten up across the race or whether they're going to stay as spread as they are.
I think we'll see a number of the drivers towards the back as they come to grips of the circuit, find a little bit more time making it tough. But I think, yeah, this first race is going to be mighty tough on a lot of those drivers that haven't quite prepared as much as some others. Anyway, it's ticked over to the warm. We've got to conduct his driver's briefing, but we shall be back in 5 minutes' time to go over the point standings and, of course, race 1 of 3 later on this evening. Don't go anywhere.
Come
welcome back. Drivers' briefing has been conducted. Warm-up has just ended, and obviously drivers just getting their final checks in for the first 20-minute race. And the front left tyre around here, road, it can be very, very interesting how that holds up, especially through that triple right-hander.
Yeah, it's a long circle. Obviously, we're not running the full bend layout that's been run, I think, in Asian Le Mans that came to visit at one point fairly recently before COVID kicked in. But there's a lot of right-hand corners, especially the second sector that has that big sweeping triple apex right-hander, and the right left right kink as well. This track is going to kill rights. It's not as bad as smaller tracks that give you no relief from the turning. There is plenty of straights and lefts here to break it up, so it's not going to be murder from just getting heat up, but it's just going to take a pounding over and over and over again, and that's what's going to start killing the tyres.
Yeah, it certainly is. Just having a look at, as you can see on your screen, it's just the track map. It doesn't do it justice, the track map in that middle sector. So after turn number 6, I believe, that hairpin right there, so that's where the first sector ends. But those right-handers there's a lot of elevation changes. They're quite quick, and they also get gradually tighter as well. So we're going to probably see a number of offs. We did see a number of offs there in practice, but it will happen in the race as well. As you can see, no record, as this is the inaugural event around here, and it will be, I believe, the longest circuit on at least the AMSOZ TCR Australia series anyway, at 4.95 kilometres. Anyway, the formation lap has got underway. Rhodey, why don't you run us through the field for race 1?
Alrighty, with a 2.5 minute probably warm-up lap, we'll go through this, and then we'll try and sneak in some drivers' points before the race starts. But starting from pole for this race, Brenton Foley, championship leader so far, and obviously has to continue that and keep building on those points tonight. Sitting behind him in second for this race is Duane Davies. He's been up the front again all season. Things are pretty close between him and Foley in the points, and I don't think he wants to let Foley get too far away. Third is Nether, a bit of a surprise in that qualifying session, him jumping up as far as he did, but now he's one of 2 Outworld Camel racing cars that we've got on the grid. Fourth is Termo in the first of the Kupakai racing cars. Kupakai Racing doing a pretty good job this season, sort of been there and thereabouts. Going back to fifth, the second of the Kupakai racing cars in Steve Bolger. Sixth is Wayne in the 04 Monster Racing Ford Focus. He's done a pretty good job getting a handle on these things. He's only recently jumped into AMSOZ as a whole, so he's doing pretty well. Seventh is Gary Neville in the Genev Racing TCR car. He's actually on the points. He's the top running semi-period driver, but obviously with missing the last round at Winton. Eighth is Lime Mitch in his first appearance in the Lime Green Lime Mitch Racing number 13 Audi. Ninth is Daniel Zanella in the VZ Motorsport Renault. That's a Fluence.
Yep.
That's a Fluence. Something fancy and something I've probably butchered. 10th is Glenn Miles in the second of the Outworld Camel Racing cars, subbing in for Mike Coulston, bringing some valuable points in for that team. 11th is Caelan Duncan. Not his debut, this is his second time here, but his first time in his own car, the number 23 DriveX Australia LA Wraps Audi TCR car. And 12th, after that did not qualify, is Brendan Ross in the second of the FCR Motorsport Corollas TCR car. Quickly going to the points, if we can. Brenton Foley currently leads our points championship, as I said earlier, 324 points. Just behind him on 308 is Duane Davies for D2 Racing. Third is Nether Relmian, putting the 1-2-3 of this race, the 1-2-3 in the points, in that Outworld Camel Racing Alfa Romeo. Fourth is Brendan Ross, done a pretty good job despite some average starts. He's so far got a best of third. And throughout the top 5, because this race isn't far off getting underway, is Termo, the first of the Kupakai Racing cars.
It's just going
And
to flip over the page, as you can see right there. There's the second page of the team standings. Well, Thomas Paul, Matt Williams. But we're about to get this race underway. Away we go. Sluggish start from Brenton Foley. So Davies into the lead for now, and it looked like I think that's Turmo also got a fairly solid start as well. Very, very long run to turn 1, so he could see some action yet. As you can see, slowly making their way towards turn 1. Wayne looking like a big mover up the inside. But for now, Davies into the lead. Looks like they've all got through there nicely, which is good to see. And Wayne and Turmo are battling side by side. Line Mitch is up 1 spot. And also Brendan Ross, he's up 5 spots. So he's had a very, very good start and a very important start for both himself in the driver's standings and also the team for FCR as well.
Yeah, we're talking about clean starts, and it's hard to get dirty ones at this track. It is massive. We saw there on the straights here. You had enough room for 4 TCR cars side by side with air. It's a very big track, and it's going to be hard for them to have issues of running out of racing room, as I saw Foley there getting very sideways behind Duane.
I did see, I think that was a Bulger as well in the background, and a massive switch going through the... and there's Foley.
He's got again.
We're going to see that, a lot of that, especially I reckon opening stanza here. First couple laps, the rear tyres a little bit cold. Duane Davies did look fairly comfortable when I did have a look at him in practice. Foley was a little bit a ways off, but I think that's more him just getting used to the track. And as we've seen, FCR, when they do practice, as he's sideways once again, they do tend to practice on all the tyres and not change them until qualifying. But Davies leading away, looking comfortable. And Nether looking like he might put Foley under a bit of pressure if he doesn't straighten his car out just a little bit.
Yeah, I almost say Foley's trying to get some tyre hit or something. The only logical explanation of what he's doing, it feels like we're watching an ARW qualifying lap with the amount of sideways that thing has.
It's wide again at the penultimate corner. As you see, Lime Mitch also sideways at the penultimate corner. So a number of drivers struggling out there at the moment. And decent final sector from Nether there. He's not too far away from Foley, and Sermo's also had a pretty encouraging start as well.
Yeah, I think what's helping those two is that they're driving the car within their limits, which might be technically a little bit slower, but it's a lot more predictable. And it also depends on how the cars are set up as to how quickly those rear tyres are getting temp, as to how quickly they can push at the full 10 tenths.
Certainly, but very, very interesting start. A little bit subdued from what we occasionally see in TCR, but Davies, he's got the dream start. He's 2 seconds ahead of Foley, 17 minutes remaining. It's a very long lap here. Probably only going to see about 10 or so laps at most, Rudy, so it's going to be difficult. It's all going to be about getting a decent start and then just keeping it nice and consistent, because even though it is a long lap and you can make up time, there's not actually that many laps to really get the job done.
It's true, but it's much as like going around Simmons Plains or Bubba to a point feels like you're doing a lot more laps than you're actually doing. It feels like it's a lot more work than the laps actually. I'm getting that the wrong around. The point is that you're going to have a lot more racing than I feel like you're going to have here. The laps, you only get 10 laps, but it would be the equivalent to 15 laps on something, say, like Winton. So
we've got Lime Mitch has dropped out. Lime Mitch has dropped out. He's pulled to the side of the track and just disappeared and pressed escape. So something's happened there. Perhaps he's had to go somewhere or computer issues, but he pulled over to the side. He had Brendan Ross right behind him, and Ross tried to follow him, and then Lime Mitch disappeared.
That looks like a planned escape, whether there's some issues or what it was, but it doesn't look like a straight disconnect.
So front three sort of settled at the moment. Gaps haven't drastically changed. 2.2 seconds between first and second. Now they're sticking around with Brenton Foley 8 tenths down the road, but Turmo and Wayne look like they're going to have a little battle to sort out fourth place. Now, speaking of Wayne, in practice he was, I think, the third or fourth fastest car out there. He didn't set an ideal lap in qualifying, so I think there's still a little bit of time in there for him if he can just put it all together.
And that's the thing. Wayne did come into this series while it was underway. He doesn't quite have the experience of those around him, and this being his first season TCR, everyone else around him at the front of this pack has done at least one previous season. But no, he's doing a good job adapting these cars and trying to get the pace out of them as best that he can. the gaps are pretty close. It's actually it's you present it there as a top three. The gaps actually present more as it being a top five. If you take out Duane Davies from that mix, because at one point there he did have a
side by side
5-second lead.
by Tomo and Wayne couldn't get the job done, but this battling is not going to help their cause if they want to stick around with Nether just down the road in the final spot on the podium.
Yeah, exactly. They need at this point, especially with where the tyre life is at, to work together and move themselves up to where Nether is at before they start going into the battle. We've seen countless examples of drivers, more so drivers in front of cars, with cars chasing them down, that get into battles and get slowed down. But you can never race as effectively when you're doing a race side by side with another car for an entire lap. And so far, they look to be following that mantra, although Wayne and Termo are both known from my driving experience. Look, if you want to go do a handle with them, they're happy to do that, but it's not going to help them in the long run of this race.
Yeah, it looks like it's sort of settled down a little bit on the back end of this lap. They're starting to stretch away as well from Brendan Ross, who is up 6 spots from where he started. Also got Zanella and Bolger. Bolger trying to recover from... he did start in P5, but dropped down on the opening lap. But Zanella doing a solid job here in his first start here.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of recoveries, Brendan Ross is up to 6th. We're used to seeing some big gains from the FCR drivers if they miss qualifying or stuff at their qualifying laps in the opening laps. But because the cars are densely packed, he hasn't had quite the substantial gain we're used to seeing. But yeah, Rossi's already up 6 spots, and he is the other reason why Termo and Wayne don't want to be battling, because if they start battling, they're going to draw themselves into his grasp.
Certainly are. And Bolger still can't find a way past the Renault down the back there. And, well, as we're looking at that, Wayne has got himself past Termo. Just cut to a replay. Got the move done into turn 1 there. It's a very, very long run. He's got the job done under braking. He's held on to it. Only 1.5, was 1.5 now, 1.4 seconds between himself and Nether. He could still steal the podium as of yet, but the next lap or two are going to be vital in that cause.
Exactly, and I think Termo's recognised, like we've seen Termo's pace, it's not going to be too far different, it's not looking too far different from what Wayne's is. Wayne might have the initial pace on the fresh tyres, but Termo's got the experience to make pace out of these things when the tyres start to go off. But yeah, to finish my point, it seems that he's taken the mature move here. He's happy to tail Wayne for the time being, and possibly put a bit more pressure on when this race starts to come to a close.
Well, Wayne's actually quite pacey at the moment, a good half a second faster than Nether in the middle sector, and in fact, just having a look at the splits as well, is even faster than, well, it wasn't so... Just trying to actually, sorry about that, having a look as well, trying to make sure if he's faster than Foley. It wasn't quite as fast as Foley, but he certainly matched him in that middle sector, so with that kind of pace, could steal the podium, and if he can put it all together, might see him challenging Foley in the latter laps if Foley does make a mistake. As we see all runners now on this last lap, they're very, very wide on the final corner. Will they pick up track cuts? Nether will cross the line. No, and no. So Wayne on that lap, 2:02.7, with Foley actually setting the fastest lap of the race that time out on a 2:02.5. So a bit up and down pace-wise, a number of these drivers. The lap before, Duane Davies, 2:02.6, fastest lap of the race. On the last lap, though, it's 2:03 dead, and then Foley was the one setting the pace. So it is, in these cars anyway, because it's so big, this track, probably a little bit difficult to get any kind of consistency going as well, because there's such a long wait between the corners.
Yeah, and we're also seeing, despite this being sort of one-make racing, I think there'd be a way to generate pace in these things, but we're starting to see some ebbs and flows between certain drivers as well across a track of this size as to where the pace is coming out, because the straights from the corners...
Nether wide, and that's allowed Wayne up into the podium. It's going to drop him down into P5 in the end. So Wayne now up into P3. He's 2.5 seconds away from Foley. And now the question remains, can Nether catch back up to the back of Termo and Wayne and get himself back into podium contention, as we see Termo just showing his nose there. Come up to the uphill right-hander here for Sector 2. And so we'll just cut to a replay, actually. And let's see what Nether had done there. Just right on board. So right on board. Alpha Romeo, yeah, just got off the throttle. A little bit of oversteer. And off he goes. And there's 2 positions right there. There goes the podium. At least for now.
Yeah, crucially, he's also taken out a brake marker ball on the way through, and we saw in Supercars on Thursday how crucial those can actually be. I think at that point of the corner, though, people aren't using that one, so we won't get in too much trouble with the other drivers.
Yeah, I think those ones out in that part of the track, you don't really need them because you're just turning right and trying to hold on for dear life. 2:03.9 for Wayne on that lap. Did see him lose. He was about 3 or so seconds behind Foley as well. Looks like Foley 2:04.9 to see Turmo now up the inside. He's going to outbrake himself, and Wayne's going to take that position back. But these guys did cost themselves a bit of time, and at the moment, Duane Davies serenely driving out front, mistake-free. Although I don't want to put the markers on him just yet, but 4.6 seconds to the good. And no one can stick with him at the moment.
Yeah, it's early. It is early days in the race to say.
Turbo! Big slide. He's avoided T-boning Wayne there. He will lose out to Nether in the end, but if he had a white driver's seat, it wouldn't be white after that. That's for sure. Lucky to avoid no damage. Lucky to avoid not ending off way out into the boonies. So all things considered, it wasn't too bad of a loss there for Turmo because it could have been so much worse.
I went to back check that on replay. He got the right rear over the curb, and it just dropped a massive twitch. And these things, especially with how white the rear end feels, and how these things, especially on cold tyres, they almost rear steer. He was very lucky to catch that, especially out on the grass, and only lose as much time as he has. And it's a shame as well. Turmo was actually quicker than Wayne, as we saw with his pass on into turn 1. He was actually quicker than Wayne by something in the where was it? Yeah, he was quicker than Wayne on that last lap by I believe a couple of tenths. But now his biggest priority is trying to catch Nether. And actually, speaking of catching, I thought we would have seen him closer, but it seems the same issues that maybe befalling Foley with his tyres. He was actually relatively slow that last lap as well. Hitting Ross, because he has not been able to make any sizable gains on the 5th place car.
Certainly hasn't, and they've had some issues in front of him as well, which you'd think after the issues they've had that Ross would be right with them. But no, that is not the case. Last lap was a 2:05.4, which was, certainly not ideal, and on this lap a 2:04.5. You want to be in the 3s at least. So Ross not coming to grips with this circuit. We did just have a look as well at Steve Bolger, who did manage to get himself in front of Daniel Zanella, but then went off the road and is in the process of, certainly wrecking his tyres there down at turn 1. So it's not been an ideal run for Steve Bolger in this one. Certainly one of his more uncharacteristic drives, it has to be said.
Absolutely, yeah. We normally see him further up the grid, although I think Winton was a good example. He was constantly slighted by, I suppose, the luck of racing. He started, I believe he started, or was at the end of the first lap, was at the back of most of the races that we had at Winton. And luck hasn't got any in for him. The racing he's had this race has been good. Every time I've checked back and have a look, him and Zanella have been nose to tail. But yeah, he's used to fighting over much more valuable positions. On the inverse, though, Zanella.
Oh, we've got Foley's had enough.
Happy.
Foley has had enough. We've just cut to him coming out of, looks like the old flip-flop. And what has he done? So he's used the curb on the inside. He's ran wide. Oh, he's hit the cones on the outside. The cones have lifted him airborne. And well, there you go. Deadly cones have cost him dearly. Certainly punished him there for trying to overdrive the car on the exit there. So now we have Wayne up into P2. That's exactly what D2 wanted in his hunt for a championship. And Wayne now P2, Nether in P3. That's also Turmo as well, up into P4. And Foley got a bit of work to do with 5.5 minutes remaining.
Exactly, and all this has done exactly what you said. It's giving Duane more of a points cushion to Foley in the championship battle. I am amazed that the cones did what they did there, that we've got cones that are strong in the TCR car and able to lift them up like that. Although I will say there was a very nice J-turn to try and fix things.
Yeah, did get out of that and didn't lose as much time as some others might have. That said, though, I mean, we have had like bollards and other stuff get in the way of cars, and in real life, if you did get a bollard sort of stuck underneath your car, it certainly wouldn't help the undersides and could get jammed in there and cause all kinds of issues. So, not the worst thing that could happen. As we've also seen plastic bags get caught up in engines and cause all kinds of dramas as well. So, not quite out of the realms of unbelievability, but certainly not 100% realistic.
Yeah, well, I was almost going to make a comparison there, considering that we've got a leading forward and then a forward behind it holding the rest of the field up. And, you know, is it worth saying debris?
No, we don't say that word here. That is just no. We don't say that word.
Yeah, so back to the thing on the track now. Duane, a touch wood, obviously, but he's got a pretty unassailable lead, I'd say, at this point. He managed to pull away at the start of this race, and he's never really had to look back. Foley, even when he wasn't eating cones, he didn't quite have the pace to really worry Duane. And he'd built such a gap in those first couple of laps that even the times where where Foley was quicker, it just wasn't by enough to make up the time that Duane had set.
Yeah, Duane, well, I think the fastest lap of the race is by Foley at a 2:02.5, but Davies only about a tenth slower. But Davies just certainly been much, much more consistent. And when you just look at him driving the circuit, you saw it even on the first lap, he's just been so much smoother around here, and that's obviously helping his consistency around the track as well. And that is why 7.1 seconds, into the lead over Wayne, who's had a pretty good run of his own. Didn't have an ideal run in qualifying, but hasn't really put a foot wrong here in the race. And he's got a couple seconds over Nether, who's going to have a very interesting final 3 minutes with both Turmo and a hard-charging Foley trying to get onto the final step of the podium.
Yeah, just looking at the timing on that last lap, Nether was a tenth slower than Turmo, and that'll be a second slower than Foley. I imagine
Foley
the
up
outward
the
camel.
inside. Foley up the inside of Turmo at, I think that's turn number 6 down there. They're going to go side by side. Turmo will have the inside for the, I guess you could say, quadruple right-handers. And Foley will try and sweep around the front. He's actually going to get that job done. So Turmo probably a little bit too nice there. I mean, you are trying to battle for a podium, but Turmo just trying to get to the finish, it looks like.
Yeah, I think at this point in the race, you've got to start staking claim a little harder for your position. We won't see that sort of problem with Nether. As I was saying, I think the Outward Camel team are going to go back and look at the setup because there isn't quite the pace they want relative to the cars around them. Foley actually is bringing on some good pace now, so maybe he's managed to fix his. I would suspect it's possible he's managed to fix his late race pace, but as a result, he's made a car that is more unstable across the length of the race, which wouldn't be a surprise because as a PBF driver myself, Foley's team in some of the other series we run, he does like a twitchy car.
Yeah, certainly, I guess a trademark of his driving style is certainly very, very loose. He's done very, very well in the middle section of this track since getting by Turmo. He's caught up to the back of Nether very, very quickly. He's pushing hard on the exit. And now they're going to have to go defensive, but he'll be sitting in the middle of the road for a long time, and Foley will get him by the time they get to turn 1. 2F54 for Nether. Not ideal, especially when Foley on that lap had to get by Turmo. Now they're going to try and stick it up the inside. Is he at turn 1? Well, he just sort of had a look.
Oh.
Foley's outbraked himself a little bit, so it'll give chance for Nether to sort of counter-attack a little bit, but he's not going to be close enough, and it's going to be difficult. I think he's got probably one more opportunity. That's coming up into the hairpin at turn 6 or 7 or whatever it is, coming up here. So he needs a good run through this sweeper and make a move here into this hairpin. Otherwise, I don't think he'll get another chance to get by onto the podium.
And he's had a look.
You can take multiple lines. He's going to try it, but isn't quite able to pull it up in time. But is still right there, able to battle with Foley. So he's still there, 3/10 away, but he's got it sideways. He's managed to hold it. We did see early on in the race he went off there when he was in third place earlier, which allowed Wayne up the field. As I think that's Foley as well, very, very wide on that exit. So it's still all to play for as both of these drivers making mistakes. But Foley now has got that gap out a little bit, and Nether looking more in his mirrors, I'd say, than when he is looking forward.
Yeah, just looking back to the field, we just saw a penalty pop up for Daniel Zanella. He actually had to tour the pit lane. I'm not sure what for. We didn't see anything for track cuts come up for a drive through. But it seems he was in the pit for something, and he's either... I put it down to entering too fast, which has released Steve Bolger, who's 8 seconds
off.
back from Ross.
He's gone too hard out of the double left-hander. He's just gone to gas it up on the exit, understeered off, and that's Turmo up a spot into P4. It looks like Nether was trying to do what Foley was doing, because Foley himself was actually quite wide, but Nether off the road, and unfortunately for him down to P5, and he was looking to put together a good run for a podium, but to no avail. Race 1, we are on the final lap, and we will go 11 laps as we cut to Duane Davies, who's a bit off the road there at turn 1.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, it's been a pretty smooth race from Duane. I think only now at this point we're starting to see some lockups, so maybe the either he's dealt with a fast spot at some point, or the tyres are just generally really not starting to like him. But there's a bit of a smoke show from that car, but he hasn't lost too much pace as a result of it. And he's actually still on par with his pace difference to the cars behind him. He's currently holding a lead of about between 11 and 12 seconds as it ebbs and flows over Wayne, who in turn has got 3 seconds over Foley, who has 3 seconds over Nether. Pretty. It's as I said earlier, pretty faultless race for Wayne.
It's been faultless. We did just see Nether getting back by Turmo there, just after turns 2 and 3 there. So I don't know what Turmo's done there. Perhaps just outbroke himself a little bit at turn 1. That's glad now that's a close in. He's now 2.5 seconds behind Foley. So this is realistically probably the only real battle that we're going to see on this final lap. That said though, got Duncan right behind Neville down in P8. So Neville was at the back of the field early on in this one, but he's caught up to the back and past Duncan. But only about half a lap to go, or just under half a lap to go for our front runners. Foley's pushing hard though. He's trying to catch up to Wayne. 2.8 seconds at the second split. Looks like actually Wayne's had a decent middle sector there and sort of held things together. But Duane, he's got 2 corners to go. Now that's still in front of Turmo for now, with a couple corners left. We've actually got Zanella entering the pits again here, but Duane Davies out of the final corner. Haven't seen much of him, but he has commanded this race, and well, absolutely faultless for him. Another faultless drive, pretty faultless anyway, but only a little minor mistake, but it didn't cost him in the end. Very, very good result for Wayne in P2. Bretton Foley, uncharacteristic run for him. He'll take P3 with Nether holding on to P4 in the end, and he's going to put his car in the wall because he's not happy, because I'm pretty sure he feels he should have had a podium, and I'm inclined to agree with him, but those mistakes costing him dear in the end. Turmo finishing P5. Ross, after his good start, sort of went nowhere and had a very, very quiet race in that one. It would have been very boring from his end. Bolger did finish in P7 in the end. Then we have Gary Neville, still yet to cross the line. He's got, he's only got one more corner to go, and he's got Duncan behind him in the Audi as well. So out of the final corner, Gary Neville will cross the line, and he'll come home P8. Duncan will finish respectable P9. Zanella a lap down, obviously. I did see him enter the pits a couple of times in the final couple of laps, but Glenn Wiles will be the last of the non-lap runners over the line, and he'll finish in P10 as he exits the final corner right now.
And it's a good result from Glenn. I was going to, based on the length of the lap, it is hard to go a lap down here to begin with. You do need a couple of pit stops down the end. But look, it's a good solid points haul, and it's the first time in a little while that we've had 2 cars scoring points for Outward Camel.
Yeah, I think the first round of the season, I think, was the only time that's happened, and I think Mike would have only raced, I think, 1 or 2 of those races. I do believe he had some issues there with his wheel, which is why he ended up, or some settings, which is why he ended up not finishing. But just to go over the results once again, obviously Duane Davies taking a faultless win, Wayne finishing in second, with Brenton Foley in third place. Alright, well, with race 1 done and dusted, we'll take a short break. Just got to go through the settings for the server and set the grid for the second of the third reverse, for the first of the reverse grid races, but the second race of the evening. Don't go anywhere. Alrighty, and welcome back to the Bend here in South Australia. And hopefully for this one, we do have Cracker that's able to actually not get obviously crashed from the game or booed from the server or whatever the case may have been, because he was in the server in practice already, but we didn't see him out there in the race.
Yeah, I'm a little bit annoyed actually to skip my notice until as we were putting in the points tally from that first race. But yeah, we didn't see an issue of a Discord account or something. So something's just happened on his end, and unfortunately, I think maybe we didn't see anything in the text chat. But yeah, it's a shame for Cracker to miss that first race because we had a look in the points tally already, and he's already dropped at least one spot from a DNS in that race.
Yeah, he stays on 160 points, and Wayne moved up with his second place onto 180. Actually, not a bad result for Wayne. Obviously, second place is very, very good regardless, but also moves him to within 18 points of Steve Bolger, who's on 198, and he's sitting at P6 in the drivers' standings. So there might be a little battle going on throughout the rest of the season for P6 there, because I don't think those guys, barring a little bad luck, are going to catch Termo there in P5.
Yeah, I think Termo is sitting. Yeah, Termo's. I'd say, yeah, without any bad luck, he's sitting fairly safe where he's at. I think the biggest issue, I think, we're possibly, if this race goes pace-wise as we saw in the past race, we could see that position between Wayne and Steve change in the next race. Because of the two cars, he's had pace between hit and miss, 4th, 7th, and his only win in the first round at Sydney, 7th, 5th, 10th at Barbagallo. Fairly most consistent round last time out at Winton, 5th, 4th, and 5th, and a 5th in that last race. As opposed to Steve Bolger's results, which was 10th, 11th, a 5th in the race Termo won, 4th, 4th, and 7th at Barbagallo, which is his best round. 3 11ths at Winton, and then a 7th in that last race. Yeah, based on the pace we've seen so far tonight as well, we're going to see that much position change already, and it's not too bad from Wayne because he had a fairly shaky start to the season, pair of DNFs at Sydney, but ever since then he's slowly been chipping away. He's been floating around the middle to the back of the top 10, lowest position of 10th, best finish is 3/6 until last race where he got his second. So it's definitely spicing up a little bit in the points.
It certainly is. If he continues this form, could see him, as I say, move up ahead of Bolger, but at the same time, keeps the pace up. He could challenge Termo there at some point. It's been a nightmare round, sort of first race there for Brendan Ross. He's only 6 points in front of Termo for 4th place in the team standings, and those guys now 40 points off Nether, who sits 3rd on 306 points. At the front, gap has come down to 8 points, with Foley still leading the way on 356, and Davies now on 348. But Foley certainly won't want a repeat of race 1 there, where Brody, we found out that he was running on an old set of tyres throughout the race, and only just managed to finish on, 3 or 4% of his tyres left on the front there by the end of the race.
Yeah, he did it. We expected he was having. I expected he was having some issues with his tyres. I didn't think it was quite that bad, and it's an issue that we've seen catch several people out just due to time management in this game and the way it works. And I definitely caught out the newbies from time to time, but it proves that even the most experienced of our racers can make mistakes. And I think based off that we can't exactly discount his pace from race 1 and wipe a clean slate, but his race 1 pace. I don't see. I think only at the sort of the very start of of race 1 will be indicative of any sort of pace in race 2. But those tyres, 4 laps down already is a third of the race that we had, and the tyres weigh heavier when your car's heavier, when your car's full of fuel. So yeah, we should see some much better pace out of Foley, and possibly, hopefully, from where we're sitting, see him actually catch and challenge Duane in this race.
He was able to set the fastest lap of the race in race 1 there, But yeah, obviously when those tyres did get nice and worn there towards the end of the race, he just wasn't able to keep up with Duane Davies. But Foley did admit though that Davies did seem to have a little bit in reserve and still a little bit better, see, tyre wear compared to himself. So it still might be quite interesting. Perhaps a slight advantage pace-wise to Foley, but Davies has been and has looked much, much nicer around this very long bend circuit.
Yeah, and I was going to make mention of it in race one, but it slipped my mind. I know we have some South Australians in the group. I can't remember, is Duane one of them?
He is a South Australian, so yes, this is one of the home circuits for him.
So yeah, so I was gonna hint towards in race one that he might have a bit of potentially he's visited, not that he's necessarily on laps at this place, although I have seen on their website recently they are still running track days through this stuff at the moment, fairly cheap ones as well. But yeah, at least he's possibly, with it being in his stage, he's possibly been down the track, and that might have helped in forming his initial pace and sort of set up and direction for this track.
Certainly. This has been a series where I know he's expressed to me on a number of occasions that he really wants to put in a good effort and try and nab a championship. And I think this season, the way it's been going, it certainly shows that the attention to detail and the work, see, it's set up and learning the tracks has paid off. His worst result at Winton was a P8, but outside of that, been on the podium in every other race. And compared to Foley, he's certainly been much more consistent of the two drivers, even though we have seen Foley in the last round obviously take a clean sweep at Winton.
Yeah, Foley's had, at this stage, it's 4 wins to Duane's 3. They've actually both been about the podium. They've actually been both podiumed in race the same amount of times, which would be 9 and 10 races we've had. Foley's first worst result was a 6th, Duane's 8th, and that's really what's separating them. Outside of 4 to 3 on wins, Duane's got 4 seconds to Foley's 3, and they both got a pair of thirds, which is what ties the points in so tightly. And that's the thing as well, as we mentioned the gap earlier that Termo's got on those behind him. To a point, these guys have a fairly comfortable pace on those behind as well. The next closest is Nether, who did manage to score a win at Barbagallo and a pair of seconds and a third so far. And he's been around the podium as well, but because he hasn't been able to be on the podium, because these two have been hogging the podiums for almost every race, it's meant that he hasn't been able to quite maintain the points proximity that he would like, sitting 50 points back on the lead of this championship at the moment.
Yeah, Nether, it's had an interesting season. Also, Barbagallo, very, very good round for him. A solid night at Sydney, but the first 2 races, the 5th and the 4th, not ideal, and then the 6th at Winton. He wasn't quite himself, even though he did manage to pick up a second in the final race there. Wasn't quite himself at Winton. A little bit off colour and off pace, but looks to be a little bit better around here at the bend, and he'll be hoping to not make the big error that he did at the triple right-hander in this one, and to take a podium, which he probably did deserve there, barring that mistake in race 1.
Yeah, and that's all it's been at this championship. I mean, every championship, I suppose, as a whole, brings it down to consistency. But like we saw in Supercars last season, Foley scored nearest to no points in the first 2 rounds and still came back to take out the title. I mean, much of this are in GT3 as well, which is still probably a bit of a sore spot for you. Yeah, it showed that you didn't have to have all the best results to win, and you could have all the best results, and all you'd need is 1 or 2 rounds to not go your way, and that would be day done for the championship.
Well, it doesn't even need to be 1 round, it just has to be 1 race where it could just completely suck momentum or just take all the points out. And as we've seen with Termo in the various series that he runs, and even with Phil Boak in the supercars last year, aside from I think he missed Bathurst, which really killed him. If he hadn't have missed that, he probably would have won the championship in the end. So it's all about every race just being there and picking up points. It's why we see Turmo well out in front of his teammate as well as Cracker. And it's also why we see Nether with a gap over Brendan Ross, when Ross probably has been a little bit more quicker pace-wise throughout TCR's history, but Nether able to finish in front of him. And it's what, I guess, this season it separates Duane Davies from this season and last season. Last season he did have pace, he was able to put on poles, and he'd take the odd win, but he would also have those DNFs which completely derailed his championship hopes.
Absolutely, yeah. We're not far off getting race underway, but unfortunately I need to quickly step away to do something, so I'm going to pay you back for making me start this stream, and I'll give you the grid for race 2.
Certainly. Well, we're just waiting for the race director to allow the drivers to begin the formation. They've still got one driver that hasn't made the grid just yet. But as you can see right there, that is the field. Has made the field, and I do believe that's Brendan Foley down there. Anyway, cars are underway for race 2. And for those playing at home, it is reverse grid. In fact, Gary Neville's at the back of the field there, so perhaps a little bit of an error there in the reverse grid settings. Perhaps I've missed him there. But unfortunately he'll be starting from the back in this one due to that error, so I do apologise for that. You've got Daniel Zanella. He'll be the one starting us from pole position. Long way to go for turn 1 though. Glenn Miles alongside him on the front row for race 2. Followed by Caelan Duncan in third in the Drive X Australia Audi. Then we have Steve Bolger for Cooper Kai Racing. He'll be hoping for a much more consistent run, and he'll be hoping to get ahead of these guys in front of him and just have a nice clean run in this one after a bit of a nightmare in race 1. Brendan Ross, again, he'll be hoping to clear those cars in front of him, move up another 5 spots at the start, get himself in the lead, and put race 1 behind him with a solid result. He's got Turmo behind him in P6. Bit of an up and down run for him. Same with Nether in P7, up and down. Both of them having chances at podiums, but not able to close the deal in the end, with Foley stealing it from them at the end. Foley, so race 1, didn't have the right tyres to start the race on, starting with a pair of old ones, and did well in the end to take a podium and set the fastest lap of the race. He'll start P8 for this one. Wayne, Monster Racing Ford Focus, he'll start P9 after a very good P2 for him. Then we have our race 1 winner, Duane Davies, in 10th place. Mitch has did see him get away off the grid. He did DNF race 1 and he's back in the pit, so hopefully whatever issues he's having, he's able to solve and able to get back going again. But he's going to start from the pit lane if he does start at all. But pit lane start means the lights won't go green until the first sector, because that's the way it goes in the R-Factor Legacy engine. So disaster for him if he does get going. Cracker there in P12. He missed race 1, but thankfully here for race 2. And unfortunately Gary Neville out of position due to, I guess I must have missed him or mistyped his name in the batch file. He'll be starting at the back in P13.
I got back just in time to catch what happened to Lime Mitch. He was trying to warm his tyres coming into, I believe, turn 5. Lost the rear and got into the wall. Actually tore the front bumper off that thing. As I was checking the replay, I came back to the car in real time, and he pulled straight and he escaped to the pits. I don't think he had a lot of damage on that thing. We've seen the way these cars flake body panels, but something he wasn't happy about with it.
Yeah, a bit of a shame,
But sorry, I just checked. He's starting it from the end of pit lane.
Yeah, he is just there. So we'll get going, thankfully. So looks like Cracker out of position at the back of the field. The lights are on. And away we go. A lot of wheel spin at the front row. Looks like Bolger's just rocketed away as well. He's going to go up the inside of
it's 5 wide almost. Yeah, I think we got 5 wide here.
It's 5 wide in the middle. There's Turmo Miles. There's Foley already
That's
up.
a
So he's
spin from Bolger. Oh, and there's been contact.
well, Foley's going to go from almost last to first here. And indeed he has. So fantastic start and a long
No,
way to
not
turn
quite.
one.
He closed the door on Zanella, and they both tandem drifted their way through that corner.
And Foley, though, into the lead. Zanella on his outside, though. Brendan Ross there too, so fantastic start for FCR Motorsport. Not ideal for Brendan Ross because it's not him in the lead when he wants to recover his spot in the standings, but fantastic for Foley, up 7 spots as Zanella laid on the brakes. A little bit of avoided a little bit of contact. Duane Davies also had a fantastic start as well, up 6 spots, so solid start from him, but unfortunately for him, his championship rival had an even better start and run, and Foley into the lead. And who knows how this one's going to play out. Obviously, did see him struggle a little bit towards the end of race 1, but we just found out that he has some old tyres on. He's making a little bit of a mistake there through the flip-flop.
Yeah, Zanella, this is trial by fire at the moment. He's getting introduced to a reverse grid race with the 2 FCR cars around him. He actually, that near miss he made was because he got on the brakes a lot earlier than the cars around him. Tried to compensate by getting off the brakes and then came into the corner too fast. But he might... Oh, I just saw Foley a little wide there, but Zanella also losing the rear. Obviously, everyone with cold tyres, and it looks like Duane Davies has made his way past Brendan Rossi.
Yeah, Ross made a slight mistake on that little uphill right-hander there, and that allowed Davies to get by on the exit. Davies needs to clear Zanella as quickly as possible. He doesn't want to let Foley get too far down the road, and if he can, he'll get by him quickly and then set after the FCR Motorsport driver and try and close the gap up in the championship once again. He's had an okay exit out of the final corner. He will pull ahead of Zanella by the time they get to turn 1. But he is 2.2 seconds, which is what the gap was, I believe, at the end of the first lap, but in reverse order between himself and Brendan Foley in race 1.
Actually, speaking of FCR, that was Ross, I think, trying to make a move there as well. He did get very wide coming out of the straight, so he wasn't where he would have liked to be positioned, but he's already just off the back corner now. He's pulling alongside the Renault.
It certainly is. A little bit of a roadblock behind Zanella at the moment. He's trying to get by. Zanella not making it easy, which is unusual. Normally see a number of guys back there and they're a bit timid, but Zanella is having a crack out there, and he wants to stay up as high as possible early on here.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of when we saw the introduction of Wayne at Sydney, how he just sort of kept fighting for a position he got. There's no rights to not fight for position, but as a rookie of the series, you're right.
Well,
People aren't normally trying to start trouble, but
Miles off in the back there. We've also got that's Duncan around.
I think Nether might have been caught up in that as well, or he's just dropped a long way back.
I think Nether's just had an awkward start there. No, that was Nether off. That wasn't Miles. That was Nether that was off the road. So a bit of a shame for them, running all the way back there. But at the front gap has actually blown out just a little bit. It's about 3 seconds, but I think that's just live time playing a little bit on us.
No, we are sitting at about 3 second gap between Davies and Foley, and it looks to be increasing at the moment.
But Wayne's got his way past Brendan Ross and is having a look at the inside of penultimate corner of Zanella. He's moving under braking, which is not something I'm too fond of. In the end, no contacts made. Wayne's still having a look at the final corner. Ross looking to make a move as well. We've got the 2 Cooper Kaya cars with Turmo and Bolger and Turmo looking to make a move as well. Poor exit from Wayne, and Ross now going to try and make a move. And got actually Zanella in front of him, sort of in between the two, so they both would have had a little bit of a helping of a toe there.
Whoa.
But Wayne going to try and hold it on the inside. He's almost smacked into the back of the Renault in front of him. Thankfully avoids it. But very, very angry battle pack behind Zanella. Up at the front though. Up at the front, Foley stretching away, 3.5 second lead, so not an ideal lap that last time around for Davies. And Foley looking the goods at the moment.
Yeah, I was just trying to get live timing.
If he's Zanella sideways at the hairpin. I don't think he's quite got to handle his front-wheel drive cars and the blow-off oversteer, or lift-off oversteer. But he's able to get through, but I don't think his tyres are like that too much.
No, I was going to say, trying to check out live timing, but I think you're right. Live timing is playing up on us. Very wide there for Zanella again, actually, right out onto the grass, and he's just about held the position, but I think he is starting to feel the pressure of just the amount of cars in his mirrors.
Yeah, I think he's looking a little bit too much in his mirrors as opposed to trying to get out there and set a decent lap.
Oh,
So
ho, ho, ho,
he's
ho.
sideways again, wide on the exit. Wayne did sort of show his nose a little bit to try and put him off, and he's going to try and sweep around. He does sweep around the outside. They're both wide this time, and Rossi is going to take the both of them. Maybe if he's lucky.
Oh, no!
Bit of contact. Zanella moves straight in front of Rossi. I don't think Ross is going to be too pleased with that. But out of all that, Wayne finally getting through and into a podium spot. We see Turmo having a look at his teammate in the back. Just have a look and see on the replay how Rossi held that one. So as you can see, Zanella wide. And then, yeah, Zanella, actually no, it looked like Ross just sort of lost it on his own maybe a little bit. And then there's a little bit of contact. But it's all happening here behind Zanella, and actually Ross has found his well behind him as well, so he hasn't quite been able to clear him. As we see Turmo pull out from the rear wing of Bolger, and he's going to move up now into P6.
What we missed as well while we're catching the replay, Ross made his feelings about it very clear. There was a fairly copious amount of headlight blinking in the direction of Zanella, so he's not pleased with how that transpired in the last sector. Ross, it's hard to tell with actually, please, we might have live timing back, but it's hard to tell where he's at on pace. But I think just based on how much we've seen him up alongside the Renault, that Rossi has pace on him, and I think he knows it.
He probably does have that little bit of a pace advantage, but unable to show it. So he's going to have to get his head down for the next lap or two and try and get a clean move by. But getting sideways like that's not going to help. Got a yellow flag out. That's Wayne off the road. We've got Foley off. Foley's gone off the road. Davies is in the lead. And Foley continues in uncharacteristic mistakes in this round. We'll cut to a replay. And here we are, the triple right-hander. And he's gone wide and he's just clipped the grass with his outside tyres. And yeah, he's skated off the inside here where he ran into the cones, and there's Duane Davies around and into the lead. So disaster for Foley. He'd built up pretty much a 4-second gap, and it's a 6-second swing because now we have Duane Davies 2.1 seconds in front. But we do know Foley, at least in this race so far, has had the pace advantage, albeit only by a little bit. So I reckon we'll see them racing, but probably not for a few laps.
No, yeah, we're seeing already that Foley's just about had the pace advantage, as you said, on Duane. The way that car's handling it, whether it's just the car set up to be twitchy or what it is, it does look like it's rear steering every stage of the race. If I didn't know any better, I'd suggest he's had an issue with his tyres again. But that car, even for Foley standards, is looking a little bit more skated than usual.
Yeah, perhaps just overdriving it just a little bit. As you see, Ross try to make the move into turn 1, isn't able to get the move done. He's going to hang it around the outside of turn 2. He'll have the inside for turn number 3. Zanella, again, a little bit sideways. He's on the power early, but Ross plays it a little bit smarter. And again, they'll draw side by side. And I think we'll try and see Ross, if they are side by side, yeah, just. But he'll try and fox Zanella into outbrake himself. But Ross has got the job done. Now, ideally, he'll try and get away just a little bit. Zanella very late on the brakes and on the power very, very early in the mid-corner. With the way Zanella's driving that car, it will not surprise me if in the final couple of minutes he just goes backwards, because he's very, very aggressive. He's been sideways a number of times, but he's also gassing it up in the mid-corner, which spins those tyres up. And
he's well wide.
He's wide. Hopefully he rejoins safely. He's rejoins we see Turmo sideways as well. It's balked his teammate. They're going to go side by side. Zanella thankfully rejoins the track safely. This is helping Nether close up as well. Nether's hoping these guys continue this battle. Looks like they're going to go 3 wide. No. Bolger goes defensive. Zanella goes to the outside. He's going to try and go around the outside. He's pulled in front. And he might get the job done here because he'll have the inside for the double left-hander coming up. So nice move from Zanella. Nice and aggressive driving. Didn't back down. And he holds on to P6 for now. And all that racing going on is exactly what Nether wanted.
Yeah, it's giving Nether a great chance to get into this battle. he's currently sitting. Is that live timing? I don't know. Live timing is giving me some weird looks there and where he's positioned. Yes, I think we're having a timing glitch somewhere. Nether's dropping right off the back of everyone else according to the live timing. But on track, he is just off the back now of Steve Bolger.
Yeah, so he's going to cross the line. Now, does it update? Yes, it does update.
It does.
So Nether in P8 there. 2:03.5, that's actually his personal best for the race, which is 1.5 seconds faster than Bolger's fastest lap. So that just shows in a bit of clear air that Nether's got a bit of pace, but it's going to be quite a bit of work to get through these guys. Just also having a look at a number of the other fastest laps. We have got our first 2-minute or sub 2-minute 2 lap with Foley setting at 2:01.9 early on in this race as well. So quite a lot of pace in that thing. 2.1 seconds separating himself and Davies at the moment as Ross very, very wide. Termo's going to go up the inside. And Ross now going to try and hold on around the outside. Termo, for now, looks like he's going to get the job done.
Ooh, there's still just enough overlap, though, that he's still at the inside, but he's just had to back it off there into the second apex.
You don't want to be on side by side through there. Ross smartly gets out of it. And actually the gap at the front actually come down to 1.6 seconds, so it hasn't been an ideal start to this lap for Davies, losing half a second. So the big battle at the moment is for 4th place. You can see Wayne there in the foreground. He's in 3rd, 2.5 seconds up the road. There's just a bit of a drift there. That left-hander, and that's not going to discourage Ross from getting back by. He's going to send it up the inside. Thankfully, they avoid contact. It's in the background. Bolger locking up as well. Termo a little bit wide on the second of the double left-handers. Ross is close enough to send it up the inside, the penultimate corner if he wants to. Thinks about it, shows his nose, falls back in. And looks like he's going to try and probably set up a move into turn 1. He's had a good run through the penultimate corner. He's having a look actually at the final corner, but again, backs out of it. Wants to get that good run out of the final corner. Termo a little bit squeamish on the exit. And now a lot of serving a slipstream for Brendan Ross to turn 1. Same goes for Steve Bolger, and now that Ross behind them as well.
Rossi looks like he is. He's put it to the inside and a late breaker as well than Tomo. But Tomo's managed to stay alongside him and actually has beat him off of the first corner. Tomo's making this very hard for Rossi, and he's already going to be a little pent up after having to deal with Zanella in the early part of this race. I imagine it's a little hot in the cockpit of 444 right now.
Yeah, he just wants to have a little bit of clean running. But Surma has been a little bit quicker, it has to be said, over the course of the weekend so far. Up the inside he goes, so a little bit of a lock-up, but Surma gives him the space, which is good to see. Avoid contact. Surma will have the inside for the triple right-hander. Rossi's going to try the old switchback, though. He's not going to be able to get the move done. And in fact, he's going to run wide there. There goes the board that Nether knocked out in race 1. Hopefully he rejoins safely. He's on the grass. It's going to be an awkward rejoin for him. And there's Nether there. So Nether's moved up ahead of Steve Bolger.
Bolger off as well.
Into the grass. And Nether, if he puts it all together, he could see himself steering down 4th place. But he's going to need a good run here in the last 6 minutes.
Yeah, I think with some of the racing that Nether's found himself in the last couple of weeks, I think he's happy for the pack ahead of him to be battling as hard as it is because it gave him a chance to catch up. But now that he's here, I'm not sure he wants to be in it with some of the racing that we've seen so far, especially with some of Zanella's racing. Speaking of, he's wide and off, and Nether's just got through. Oh, that said, he's just lost the rear bumper.
Lost the rear bumper, but still going, thankfully. Also got a battle for the lead now, so Foley has caught up to the back of Duane Davies. Davies was over a second and a half ahead at the start of this lap, but looks like a poor final sector, perhaps. Just having a look, although we do have live races sort of playing up, so it's hard to say where exactly he's made that mistake. But that gap was 1.5 seconds at the start of the lap. As you can see on the next lap, it is absolutely nothing at all. 5 minutes to play. And Foley now on much better tyres than what he would have been on at this point of race 1. As this time, hopefully, he's put on
Zanella
tyres.
He's lucky to get away with that. He looked like he full-on licked the stamp there with Nether. Nether saw him coming and got out of the way, and they just about got through turn 1 fine, but Zanella has ended up getting past Nether.
very, very late on the brakes. Massive, massive lock-up into turn 1. And, yeah, he's got that position back. But Nether's had a good run through the flip-flop. He's going to try and make a move into turn number 6.
And Rossi's wide.
Rossi wide as well. But, looks like Zanella's had the decent exit and will hold on for now. Just cut to a replay to see what Ross has done here. And he's just late on the brakes. Maybe he's outside tyres slightly on the grass, but just outbroke himself by the look of it. But thankfully for him, he lives to fight another day. Wayne in front of him sort of having a very, very quiet one, with the guys behind him battling, and the 2 cars in front of him much, much quicker. Speaking of those 2 though, Davies holding on for now. Race 1 was 11 laps, and as the front runners were able to get to the front pretty much immediately on that first lap, we'll probably see 11 laps once again. So he's going to have about 3 to 4, yeah, I think 3 laps to hold on once he crosses the start-finish line.
Yeah, that's what's helped. I think the space of the track especially has helped in that happening. But look, with 3 laps left, I think it helps both of them in a way. Only 2 laps, usually a good thing for someone in Duane's position, but it is 2 very long laps, and conversely, it is only 2 laps for Foley, but they are 2 very long laps for him to try and get a pass done.
Further back, got Brendan Ross in 5th all the way to the inside of the road. I don't know if he's letting Zanella go. No, he's just trying to break the toe. Zanella didn't follow him for the slipstream. So Ross sort of holds onto that advantage. Zanella's sort of half trying to make a move, half going defensive there into turn 1. And it hasn't really helped his cause because it's allowed Nether to close in. So see another lock-up from Brendan Ross there at turn number 4 area.
We've seen a few of those sort of lock-ups from the FCR cars as well, just across the length of the season. The way they got those cars set up, they must really pitch one of the fronters and Nella.
Both of them sort of taking maybe a slightly different line, but a big lock-up for Ross. And he certainly did lose a little bit of time there to the cars in behind him. It sort of forced a little bit of a check-up. So these 3 running very, very close together at the front. Foley right there with Davies. Was 4.5 tenths at the first split. It's probably about 2 tenths. Yep, there it is. Just under 3 tenths here in the second. Both in the mid 202s on the last lap. Interesting to see what they manage when they go over the line this time. They're 11.5 seconds. Make that 12 seconds over Wayne there in 3rd place. So these guys significantly faster than everybody else as Foley has a look at the penultimate corner. Just trying to fox Davies into a little bit of a mistake, as it gives him a little bit of a serve there, and I don't think Davies is too happy with that.
No, I was just trying to look back through the pace, and the most frustrating part of this for Nether back in the race for the mid-pack, Nether's best lap is a 203.5. Everyone else around him is in the 204s, the mid 204s to the high 204s. It's good that he's managed to make out these spots, but it's going to be killing him. As of he just pulled out again, just having another look trying to get past Daniel Zanella.
We've got our leaders side by side. Foley's going to try and go around the outside of turn 1, have the inside for turn 2, but Davies able to hold on. A little bit of a lock-up for Davies. Foley will try and get him on the switcheroo, but he's not going to have the drive out of turn number, I think that's 3 down there. But again, he's going to try and make a move into the hairpin. Can he pull it up? Will Davies get the switchback going? Well, Foley is ahead for now. Looks like he's actually going to hold that. So Davies didn't fight that one too hard. That said, he has got the inside and a bit of an overlap for the triple right-handers here. Both drivers leaving each other space. Well, I certainly want to be in Davies' position at the moment, but Foley has pulled ahead. But he's still got to get through this long right-hander as well, and then obviously down the long straight out of the final corner as well. So now it's going to be Davies' turn to have a little bit of a slip down the straights.
And Duane in position is probably in the best position we've seen with the slipstream down the straights. It doesn't actually have a great effect coming to the line. So if he wants to, the best spot for him to be coming onto the
lock up for Foley, lock up for Foley, and Davies is going to send it up the inside there. Leaves him a little bit of room on the exit of double left-hander there, but pressure getting to Foley just a little bit. Davies doing a good job at the moment. He wants that lead back. Time has expired. The next lap will be the final one. It's all going to be for Foley about getting a good exit. It's all going to be about Duane Davies getting a good exit and then pulling it up at turn 1. He hasn't had an ideal exit. Foley's just got the better of him. But Foley to the inside. Old F3 tricks here. And maybe by the end of it, Davies will be close enough. But I think Foley, for now, has done it. Yes, he's done a good enough job into turn 1 to hold on. Davies will have a look. Not going to be close enough to get the job done. So now his next best bet is into the hairpin where Foley got him just 1 lap ago. So he's going to need a good exit out of this corner here because he flat out through the flip-flop.
Talking about close, and I'm not actually sure he's going to catch him in time, but Brendan Ross put in a near PB lap that last lap, and actually Tomo's just gone wide at turn 1 just a bit. So we might be seeing a potential position swap here for 4th place.
Certainly might. Also got Nether has managed to get by Zanella. At least temporarily. At the front though, Foley still leads. Davies half a second away, and will probably be ruining himself, making it easy for Foley on that last lap. So as you can see, just struggling. The triple right-hander, another one of those sort of lock-ups. I don't think it's much more a lock-up, more so the rear tyre just bouncing along the ground when it's unweighted on those Corollas. So only a few more corners to go for Foley to navigate to take the win here and extend the lead back out to extend the gap back out to 12 points in the championship. Hasn't ran wide this time at the double left-hander. Has only got 2 more braking zones to contend with. And will Davies settle for second? He's having a look at the penultimate corner. He's not going to get the job done there. He's going
to need a good run through this last corner here to try and get to have any chance of having a pace advantage, and I don't think he's got him.
No, he hasn't quite got it done. They're surprised he didn't take more curb in the end, but Foley will take race 2 after a little bit of a fight back after going off there in the midpoint of that race. Duane Davies will finish in second, and Wayne will finish a fairly comfortable 3rd place, so 2 podiums for him. Turmo once again in P4. And then we have Brendan Ross in 5th. Zanella has got by the Railman, who flashes his lights there for P6 and 7. Bolger in P8. Gary Neville in 9th with Duncan in 10th. They've got a couple corners to go. And then we've got Cracker not too far away. That's locking up at the penultimate corner there. But Nether didn't seem too happy about that one. So I'll just cut to a little replay and we'll try and find out what exactly transpired. So just going all the way back here. May have just been a mistake from Nether, but drivers don't normally flash their lights all that often. So here we go. So this is coming out to the hairpin here. Zanella very, very late on the brakes up the inside. Now trying to get him on the old switcheroo. Couldn't quite get the job done. And 2:03.5 was his fastest lap, 9/10 faster than Zanella, but wasn't able to get by him in the end and drive away. So they kept counter-attacking, and that looks like it's just about the gist of it. So I'll just skip through a little bit forward. To the end, a little bit of a move under braking there. Again, that's not what we like to see. That is, if that does get reported, you can get penalised for moving under braking. So that's probably why Nether wasn't too pleased with that. But in the end, Zanella did take P6, Nether P7, Bolger P8 with Gary Neville in P9, Caelan Duncan in 10th, Cracker 11th, Glenn Miles in 12th, and unfortunately, once again, Lime Mitch, a second consecutive DNF down there in 13th place. Alrighty, pretty entertaining race 2 there, with some obviously battle for the lead, and then very hectic battle for 4th place there. Hopefully we can see more of the same here in race 3.
Absolutely, yeah. A very, very willing race from Daniel Zanella. Although, as we saw, as you mentioned there in that last replay, possibly pushing us a little too far in his attempt to hold the positions. He's just about sort of had the pace, but the advantage from where we're sitting is he's had action around him. Whether or it's been completely within the white lines, as it were, is another matter. But yeah, it's more what we're used to seeing in TCR. That sort of racing, that mid pack was very frenetic, and things were nice and busy at the front as well towards the end. Which ideally for Foley they wouldn't have been, because he wouldn't have been back there in the first place to have to make that spot back up. But I think most of the drivers in the field had some pretty good racing.
I think aside from Wayne, just about everybody had someone to race against throughout that race. Wayne was a bit like Brendan Ross in race 1, where the cars in front of him were just a little bit quicker and the cars behind him were all battling. So, yeah, once he got into that podium position, got ahead of Zanella and Brendan Ross, he was relatively untroubled, but everybody else there certainly had to either hold on for a majority of the race or try and get some moves done to try and get themselves up as high as possible towards the end there.
Yeah, just looking into the points now as we just put them in. The gap with that close finish they had at the end there, the gap now between Termo and Rossi is down to 4 points, and Wayne Spencer has moved to within 6 points of Steve Bolger.
Yeah, so very, very interesting for the championships up and down the field. We'll just set the grid and get things ready for the final race of the evening. But it'll only be about 5 or 10 minutes away. So don't go anywhere for one final race here this evening from the Bend. Alrighty, and welcome back. We're about a minute away for the final race of the evening, where we've had a couple different winners. We've had Duane Davies take race 1, we've had Brenton Foley take race 2, with Wayne Spencer finishing in second in race 1 and third in the second. So he's had a very, very good round in the standing, or tonight around the bend. It's also moved him up in the standings as well. He's actually moved up to 7th place in the standings and finds himself only 6 points away from Steve Bolger in P6 in the standings. So his previous best result was a P6, which he'd gotten a couple times, was Wayne, and he's absolutely obliterated that tonight with a second and a third. So it'll be interesting to see how he can go in the final race of the evening. Also looking at the championship standings, the gap did come down after race 1 between Foley and Davies after Davies' win, down to 8 points, but after Foley claiming the win in race 2, it has just edged out to 12 points, but absolutely nothing between those guys at the moment. Nether on 328, he's got a bit of a gap between himself and Duane Davies, but he's also got a little bit of a gap behind him as well, with Brendan Ross sitting on 292 points. But Ross can't rest on his laurels. He's had a bit of a nightmare round with the 6th and a 5th place. He's on 292. Termo's had a 5th and a 4th, and he moves within 4 points of the second FCR Motorsport driver. And then we have that big gap to Steve Bolger on 218. But fairly interesting night's running. First time Automobilista Australia has been around the Ben Motorsport Park. And well, Rody, how do you think this final one here this evening is going to play out?
Look, from where I'm sitting, I'd like to see more like we had in race 2, but I went down into the pits in between the last race and this one, and the feeling about how that race panned out wasn't mutual, especially from those in the mid pack. Look, we love close racing, DCR. That's one of the ways that's kind of its bread and butter, is nice close racing. A bit of tandem drifting, plenty of door handle banging, panels flying everywhere, partially because of the way these cars are built. But it would be nice if it toned itself down maybe a little bit at certain points of the race. But we've got the grid rolling and underway for the formation lap of race 3.
Certainly. Anyway, we are underway, and we've actually had Wayne has missed the start, and he's going to be starting from the pit lane, so he's going to be waiting there for a while. But Rudy, why don't you run us through the grid here for the final race here from the bend?
Alrighty, starting from pole position he's out of position, but it's Glenn Miles in the Atwood Camel Racing car. Normally, I say normally, but liveried up for Mike Coulston. Glenn will be taking over Coulston's seat for the time being, though, to bring in some valuable points for the team. Second is Cracker in the Cracker Racing team car. Not the leading Seat team, the Cracker Racing team, but he is definitely up there in the mix with the other Seats in the points. Third is Gary Neville in Geneva Racing TCR Volkswagen. We don't see a lot of this car for during the races, which is a shame because he's done a nice job with the livery of it, but fairly quiet run this round out for Gary Neville. Fourth is Steve Bolger in the first of the Copper Kai Racing Seats. He had a nice busy race, that one as well, battling with Zanella again. I think he would have rather been finished a little higher than he did. Fifth is Netherelmian from Outward Camel Racing, second of the Outward Camel Racing cars. He was overall not happy, partially I think with how he finished that race, but how things turn out around him, and he's going to hope for, hoping for an improvement to how things turn out. This is Daniel Zanella. I don't think we expect to see him finish that high up in the end of it, and he was certainly doing everything he could and then some to try and hold on to these positions as he could. Seventh is Brendan Ross in the first of the FCR Motorsport Toyotas. Good run for him in that race. Eighth is Terman, second of Copper Kai Racing cars. Good run from him, and those two are very close in the points at the moment. Ninth, as we pointed to earlier, same from the pits, is Wayne for Monster Racing. 10th is Duane Davies for D2 Racing. Hopefully another last to first or last to front row challenge for him. Brenton Foley won't be able to do a last to first now because he's not the last car on track. and Caelan Duncan for Drive Australia, I believe, out of position there with a server leave and a rejoin late in the session.
Yes, that would be why he's down the field, and I didn't redo the grid. But that's what you get, I guess, when you do leave the server after the grid's been set. But drivers now forming up on the grid. Glenn Miles once again a mile away from his pit box. A number of the drivers actually quite a ways away from their grid slots here. With this, Brendan Ross as well. He's a fair way away from the start of the grid slot as well. Anyway, we're about to go racing here from the bend. And 4 lights, and we're green. And looks like Cracker's got away. Okay, looking further back, it doesn't look like Foley's had the lightning start like he did last time, but we will see him probably pick his way through the field through the first couple corners. Once again, about 3 or 4 wide in the midfield, but Cracker will lead into turn 1. Davies up the inside and up a number of spots there into P number 5, so ideal start for Duane Davies, and he now finds himself behind Netherrealmian, who's also up a spot, as we see Bolger not getting the ideal exit out of turn number 3, and Zanella flashing his lights there. I'm not sure what that's about. Cracker, nice little lead at the start though, Rody.
Whoa, a little wobble there for Bolger, actually. He's just let Nether through on the inside, and Duane looks like he wanted to make a move past him as well. Hearing a lot of clashing in the background, and there go all the bumpers, about 3 or 4 cars. That'll be the Genev Volkswagen and a pair of the FCR Toyotas, I think, are also missing panels from that.
Yeah, so Cracker, Zanella, Nether, Davies, Bolger, Turmo, Foley, Neville, Ross, Duncan, and Miles. The top 11. So Wayne has got underway down in P12. Line Mitch unable to make the start in this one. And Nether going a little bit defensive there in the back, not wanting to let Duane Davies go. His first few laps are going to be important, and I reckon they're going to be mighty important for the championship for Duane Davies. He's got to get ahead. He's looking to make a move on Nether for P3. He's got to get away early and build a lead over Bretton Foley, because he does have the pace advantage, but Davies needs every advantage he can get. And after that fantastic run in the first few corners, he's set his race up nicely as he looks again to make a move in the penultimate corner. Cracker locking up ahead, and I don't know if there's contact, but that's Nether a little bit wide as we see one of the Cooper Kaya cars losing its front splitter, but Davies now up into third.
Oh, Cracker! He's around, and he's caught Duane and Zanella in that.
There's a big off, so we'll just cut to what happened there. So unfortunately, after that, Davies was caught up in it. He had nowhere to go except into the back of Cracker, who's stuck in the racing line. And Davies now behind Bretton Foley, so it just always seems to roll Foley's way, even after Davies got the cracking start. But now, Nether had a bit of a frustrating run behind Zanella in race 2. He's not going to have to deal with him now, because Zanella was caught up in that. Nether able to get through unscathed, and 1.5 seconds clear of Turmo, who's just ahead of his teammates. So things looking good for Cooper Kai at the moment. Things also looking good for Bretton Foley, as he is now in front of Duane Davies, who hopefully doesn't have too much damage.
Yeah, it's sort of a swings and roundabouts. I think Nether getting the calm of having to, I suppose, almost endure that second race by now having Zanella well clear of him. And Duane getting, I suppose, calmer for having such a comprehensive win in the first race, getting caught up in that. Duane's got the pace to stick with Foley. We've already seen that. It's a case of who can get through this pack the best, and they've got the pair of the Cooper Kai racing cars right in front of them at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be crucial for both Foley and Davies in how they get by the Cooper Kai cars. That said, Foley hasn't exactly been all over the back of Bolger on this lap. But looks like it's much better here in the second half of the lap. Looking to probably make a move here into the penultimate corner. Bolger going a little bit defensive and trying to force Foley to go around the outside. That will probably allow Davies to close up as well. Foley going to try the outside, and he's actually going to get the job done there. So Bolger just not aggressive enough, and then pulls in front of Duane Davies. So Foley getting the job done. but Bolger there is not aggressive enough on the brakes.
No, I'm not sure whether it's, this season's cars maybe are not quite acclimatized into Bolger as he would like. But he doesn't look as comfortable as I suppose you like to be in these cars. Speaking of people not doing so well, Cracker has unfortunately DNF'd. I don't think as a result of that contact, but it's possible that from where he was, he just didn't think the race was continuing.
Also having the first couple of cars just starting to close up just a little bit. Nether hasn't been able to get away from Termo, who's closed the gap down, and at the same time Termo's been closed down by Foley, who's had Bolger just stick with him down the pit straight there, as we see once again smoke billowing from the back. The rear left tyre of the FCR Toyota Corolla. Next lap or two, crucial for Duane Davies to get by Bolger and try and put Brenton Foley under a little bit of pressure. Also crucial that Foley doesn't make a mistake when trying to get by Termo either.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just Foley getting a little bit sideways once again. A little bit further back though. It's Ross was going to try and make a move on Gary Neville, but didn't have the ideal run through the flip-flop. Got Davies a little bit closer to Bolger, coming to the double left-hander. It's going to try and make a move.
I think he's close, but I think he might just... Foley's off.
A little bit of an overlap, and Davies should pull ahead. That off certainly going to help Davies, that's for sure. Termo now has caught right up to the back of Nether, who's not ideal through the penultimate corner. And so that mistake exactly what Duane Davies needed. Behind them, Gary Neville, he's got a couple angry cars behind him as well. Brendan Ross looking to try and make a move as well. So we've got two distinct packs. We've got the front four, and then we've got a secondary four a few seconds back.
Fastest lap actually there from Termo as well, which sort of shows how the first part of this race is played out in such chaotic nature. But PB there for Termo, session best for Termo there with a 2:03.2.
Contact between Zanella and Ross. Zanella again trying one of those really late dive bombs into turn one there, and Ross just saying, no, I'm not going to let you just have that. Especially after seeing some of the shenanigans you'd get caught in if you did get stuck behind him. Ross trying to get by Gary Neville. And he's had a good run through the flip-flop and out of turn 3, so he might just try and send it up the inside here at the hairpin. He's having a look up the inside. Neville gives him a little bit of room, but Ross not quite close enough, at least in the mid-corner, to get it done. They're going to be side-by-side on the exit, but I expect Neville to hold on for now. Yeah,
it's a similar situation for Rossi the last race. He's caught up behind cars that are on pace, a little bit slower, but he can't do much about it because even with such a wide track, they're struggling to get by. That said, Gary just lost a little stability there through the corner, put it on the grass, but Rossi's locked it up and actually given Zanella way through, and there's a yellow flag because somebody's off, and I can't pick who it was.
I didn't see anybody off in the background there, but we've got Foley all over the back of Termo at the moment. We did see Nether actually get quite a bit wide there.
Wow. That's Zanella off. He was trying to take a bit too much out of, I suppose, the rear of Gary's car, and they were both unsettling each other. In the end, it was near on-wheel contact, and it sent Zanella flying off to the infield, but he's recovered and actually hasn't lost a whole lot of pace.
Yeah, it's a little bit too hard at racing there. Didn't give Neville too much room and caused that bit of contact. Termo had a really good run out of the final corner, and he's going to look to make a move into the lead, into turn 1. Foley's not too far away either, so I wouldn't expect him to... I'd expect him to try and make a move as well. In fact, he's looking like he's going to send it up the inside onto Termo.
He was almost tried two of them.
Almost made contact with Nether as well into turn 1. Termo, though, very, very timid. He doesn't want to race and try and get the move done. And it could cost him if Foley gets by, or Foley being behind Nether sort of encouraged him to drive a little bit faster. And now with Davies right behind him, he might lose out a little bit of time here in his battle with Nether, who's a lot more closer than him pace-wise.
I think maybe Repsol need to look at some sponsorship and some of the other cars in the top 5 to start to get some more facilitating driving from those
Oh, and
who
Foley's
were.
wide. I thought he was going to lose it there. Turmo will. Oh, well,
Oh,
Turmo almost
Turbo!
loses
He's
it.
hit. He's caught. He's in the way, and he's
And
caught Duane in that.
once again, Davies caught up behind people making mistakes in front of him, and that's actually cost him time to get by Turmo and have a look at, unfortunately, Foley as well. So it hasn't quite worked out for Davies. He's still going, hasn't got any damage from all that, but certainly frustrating, and he's lost a lot of time to Foley and Nether in front.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say he probably slightly mildly miffed at how that one turned out for him. It was no humongous fault on the part of Turbo. He just sort of lost the rear of the car. Speaking of Foley, just doing the same thing there. But yeah, this start of this race, the chips have not fallen Davies' way.
It looked good after the first lap, but he got to the end of the final corner. Cracker going off. Davies late under braking. He's seen that Turmo hasn't been all that aggressive. Turmo just sort of a little bit of contact between the two. They will right on board just to see how that all played out. But finally Turmo getting a little bit more aggressive under braking, but Davies is right there. Turmo probably not going to be too pleased with that one. In fact, Davies getting out of it to avoid a penalty. So that's more time lost for Davies. And he'll be thinking, Turmo, if you had just got out of my way to begin with, wouldn't have had to cost us both time, because now they're way behind. 3 seconds behind Foley and Nether.
Yeah, and actually, Nether's done a good job. I think it's partially because of the racing behind him. Nether's done a good job to hold on so far. We are just over halfway through this race, and Nether's still holding on to the lead. He has now got Foley behind him, though, and Foley hasn't had the quickest lap of this race. But as we've seen in the last race, he has got the potential to be there.
Yeah, Duane Davies does have the fastest lap in this one, 2:02.7. So just hasn't been able to use it. Hasn't had the clean air for quite a while. And he desperately needs to get by Turmo, and he needs Nether to do him a solid and hold Foley up for the rest of the race. Now, Nether has been, has to be said, one of the more difficult men to pass in Super 2 and here in TCR. And he's going to have to put all of that and probably a little bit more to hold off Foley. The track is just so long and big that, Foley's having a look now. Not quite the corner to try and make a move in, although we did see Zanella try it, which ended up in a bit of contact between himself and Neville. But that long run to turn 1 certainly doesn't help if you're a slightly slower car, Rody, with your car punching a massive hole in the air.
No, it is a massive straight. I think it probably might be the longest one we're going to visit in TCR. And even with cars getting equal runs over the last corner, the advantage is always there for the car following. If the car in front manages to botch the last corner, it's all the better for them. It's almost long enough that you can get people slipstream passing and then repass the passee as such. And one thing that doesn't help from the cameras we're using as well, the great camera angles, but the cars don't actually look as fast as they are due to the massive scope of the place.
Yeah, we've had actually Duane Davies lose out to Steve Bolger, so they've been racing on this lap as well. Hasn't been a great race for him after the first lap for Duane Davies. Racing in the final sector between himself and Bolger, and more time lost. Nether still holding on in the lead. As you see, Davies now up the inside at turn number 3. Gets that job done, and now he's got 2 seconds of Turmo down the road and not too much time to close him down and get by. I've got to change for the lead by the looks of it. Foley up the inside of the hairpin. Never's going to try and hold on around the outside, but he's not going to do that. So once again, Foley into the lead, and Davies down there in 4th place. He's not going to like that at all.
No, I think, as you said, Turmo is probably the only person Duane's going to be able to catch. Nether, from his sitting, he can hold on to a 2nd place fairly comfortably, but he is... I just starting to see some mistakes creep into his driving.
Yeah, look like just over-driving it a little bit on this lap. And has lost a little bit of time. He's going to hope that Foley has a little bit of a poor run in this final sector, and he gets a little bit of a slipstream and tow down that pit straight. If he has any chance, if he wants to get back into the lead, because once that gap gets over a second and Foley breaks that tow, I can't see Nether getting back by to fight for the win in this one.
No, Nether's only chance is that Foley's tyre wear is more significant than his. Foley has had to come up through the pack, but so has Nether to a point. Um, and that hasn't been sufficiently hard enough racing from the number one that tyre wear would be that radically different. So, barring a mistake, I think the top two are pretty close to set in stone.
It's 2:03.0 for Foley, and he did have to obviously get that move done as well, which is not far off his personal best for the race. Nether, 2:04.3, and that's a good second off his best. In the background, got Turmo just in front of Davies, who has caught him up, and they've dropped Bolger just a little bit. So this is going to look like the battle to stick with for the final 5 minutes. Bolger not too far away. Also Rossi, he's had a very anonymous round this one. Certainly not one of his best. In other ones that he's had poor showings in, he's had pace, but he's made mistakes. This one, though, he's not really had any pace, and has to be said, he's probably been the fifth or sixth slowest car. As you see Davies now
Wayne.
make a move into the hairpin, and a little bit of contact with Turmo there in the mid-corner, but Davies finally getting that job done about 3 or 4 laps later than what he would have hoped.
Yeah, we mentioned Tomo being a bit timid around him, but he did give him a nice little bump draft out of the corner. But yeah, this puts Duane up past, and the next person on the track for him is Nether. But again, without a mistake, I don't think we're going to see a pass there. I think the only next bit of action we're going to see as he runs wide is whether Tomo can get back past him.
Yep, certainly. Nether's put together a decent lap at the moment. Still only 1.1 behind Foley, so he's putting him under just a little bit of pressure. But again, I think he's just out of that slipstream range, and once you're out of there, it's difficult to get back in if you are the slower car. Davies hasn't quite finished off the challenge of Turmo. He's going to need a good exit out of these final 2 corners. Otherwise, we could see Turmo making a move into turn 1. And again, hasn't been an ideal run to the penultimate corner for Davies. Turmo is right there. And the run through the final corner here is going to be vital. He's pushed hard. I think Turmo's also had a decent exit, so it's not going to be much between the two of them as they go into turn 1. But I think Davies will just hold on to P3 for now.
Yeah, he is very much slowly pulling away, and Tomo is not the sort to pull a banzai dive from way back into turn 1. So yes, they will hold position as they stand at the moment.
And Bolger's had a solid lap on that last one. He's closed the gap up between himself and his team. Also had, looks like Ross also just starting to close as well. Yeah, 2:03.2 for Ross, 2:04.0 for Bolger, and I think that's a 2:05.3 for Turmo on that last lap. With we actually had Foley setting the fastest lap of the race as well on that last lap as well. His gap is now 1.8 seconds between himself and Nether, with Nether just a 10th shy of his personal best. So Nether is trying out there, but he needed to be doing that a few laps ago when he was in the lead.
Yeah, at this point, personal bests are not going to do a whole lot of good in the grand scheme of things, because those personal bests need to be quicker than Foley's, and nobody else on track is quicker than Foley at the moment.
Certainly, I was just actually having a look at something on my Discord. Actually, someone sent me a photo of Instagram where I've got a livery of my car, and it's actually been repped by Max Verstappen of all people. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, we've got a minute and a half to go, and a little bit of a mistake there for Nether, so he's going to drop a little bit more time. Looks like Foley is just starting to break from Turmo. Turmo is going to be starting to think of his teammate in his mirrors. Just a little bit. 1.1 seconds separating Turmo and his teammate, but I think Bolger's had a good final sector here, and that gap will be just a little bit closer. Davies across the line, 2:03.5, 2:04.5 for Turmo, and a 2:04.5 also for Bolger, with 9/10 separating the teammates as we enter the penultimate lap.
Yeah, just having a quick look at the points. For the purpose of the team's points, and I suppose the points of his teammate, Termo can afford to let Steve Bolger pass and will still hold a lead. It'll actually be tied, but he will have the lead due to his win over Brennan Ross at the end of this round in the grand slam of the points situation. But that said, Steve Bolger looks to have dropped back from Termo slightly and is actually closer to Rossi.
He hasn't had an ideal run through the first sector. Still a little bit of time to go for things to go awry. And yeah, Termo doing what he has to do in that first sector there. A couple of tenths faster than his teammate, with Brendan Ross about a tenth or so faster than Bolger. But it looks like he's actually had a decent run through the hairpin, and that gap's come down even more. And there's Bolger wide, he's on the grass there. Ross also a little bit on the grass, and he's sideways. He's able to hold it. He's still managed to close the gap down. Understeer for Bolger in the mid corner there. And Ross a real threat now to steal P5 from Bolger as time expires.
Yeah, so it's going to be another 11 lap race again because the leaders managed to do such a great job of getting to the front despite all the kerfuffles. And Ross is now alongside, and it looks like he might be dropping. No, it's actually Bolger got hung up on the curb a little bit there. But he has managed to pull in front just for the moment.
Yeah, Bolger doing a good job there, holding on. Ross doing all he can. The battle, they're probably not going to be able to catch the car in front now, but Ross desperately trying to move up into P5 and rectify some kind of result from a rather poor weekend by his standards. But, he's having a look. He's probably, he's going to play it smart now. Wait for the slipstream as we see Brenton Foley, fastest lap of the race. 202.5, and he's broken the back of Neller's charge. But Ross now in the slipstream. Bolger going defensive to the inside of the road. Ross is going to still try and go to the inside. He doesn't do it. Barrichello doesn't complain and go off the road and almost the wall. He goes to the outside where there's space. He's going to try and go around the outside. They both outbrake themselves. Rossi's going to try and get Bolger on the switch back, but can't quite get the job done. So there's at least one Cooper car driver showing that you can be a little bit aggressive and try and hold your position. And if Sermo had done that a few laps ago, he'd probably find himself a couple of spots higher. But anyway, Bolger, bit of understeer through the flip-flop, and Ross says thank you very much. And he'll move up into P5 for now, but he does still have to pull it up. And I think the front tyres on that Cripper roadie, I think they're toast.
Yeah, they're not looking too good on Steve's car. He's just about holding in pace, and he's not quite off the back of Rossi yet. I've just seen Rossi's car similar step direction to Foley. That thing is very twitchy, so there's a nice big slide there as well. He doesn't have the range of a straight to pulling slipstream off of majorly. But all he needs to do is stay on the back of Brendan Ross's car, and he might see an opportunity present itself in the next couple of corners.
And it hasn't been an ideal run. He hasn't quite broken the back, has Brendan Ross. And Steve Bolger still trying. But he's only really got into the double left-hander and then probably the penultimate corner. That said, that Ross with that lock-up has just encouraged Bolger to stick with him. And we'll just skip ahead because we've got Foley into the penultimate corner. And he's coming out of the final corner now. We'll skip ahead. And again, Rossi going defensive penultimate corner. Bolger up the inside. He's going to have a look and try and get the job done very late on the race. Here's contact, but Ross will hold on for now. Foley will take the win. Nether, in the end, still taking a very good P2, but he'll be a little bit annoyed he couldn't set some faster laps sooner. Davies, he'll be ruining being caught up in some incidents that weren't exactly his fault, that cost him a bit of time to his championship rival. Sermo P4 in the end. Ross taking P5 as well in the end, with Bolger taking P6. All those guys there from really from 4th all the way down to 6th there. They put on a really good show in all the races. As now we see, with all that run-off roadie, this is what we watch this series for, and that's the reverse derbies.
Yeah, I was just we missed it towards the end. It was actually pretty close racing. We need to go and have a look on the replay of this of the timing later. But Kalen Duncan coming across the line less than a second from Gary Neville. They were actually nose to tail for a good part of those last couple of laps, so it seems Kalen might have been catching Gary at the end there. But after Steve Bolger, 7th, Daniel Zanella. Don't think he'll be too happy with how that one turned out from his point of view. Gary Neville was mentioned in 8th, Kalen Duncan in 9th. Wayne, uncharacteristic from what we've seen from so far tonight, but finishing in 10th. with Glenn Miles coming around now to finish the race in 11th with Cracker, the only DNF.
Certainly a bit of a shame for Cracker to DNF, but at least he was able to make it this evening, as we see some very dark lines there with the FCR cars just doing almost perfect reverse goeys there. But even though it was a fairly large circuit, Rody, there were some concerns that we wouldn't see some good racing with in practice and qualifying anyway, large gaps between drivers. We did see some really good racing throughout all the races tonight.
Yeah, it was a little quieter in that first race, but obviously, yeah, with the size of the track compared to the cars, I was definitely personally a little worried that we wouldn't get the racing we're used to. But it took us time. Where the first race was a bit of a warm up as such, but once in the second race especially, it was back to what we're used to seeing, just with all the extra room for cars to make moves without having to put two wheels on the grass or jump over curbs or the like. So, look, I think a pretty good result in the end.
Certainly was, although I think more of a good result for our championship leader, that's for sure. Bit of luck in that second race. He got his way up through the field, but his championship rival, he had a fantastic start, was sitting nice in third place, but unfortunately for him, Cracker, losing at that final corner, really did scupper his chances of getting away and trying to get some more points back on Brenton Foley.
Yeah, and that's, I suppose, the luck of the game, especially with these reverse grid races, is that you have plenty of great action, like the last to first moves within one turn, but then you also do get that where some of the drivers, as like we saw with Daniel Zanella in that second race, you get some of the drivers who are a bit more courteous around the cars that are faster, and some of those that, and by all rights they can, will fight to almost to the death for the positions that they can get. And it was maybe a little bit clumsy by the cars that were there, and it was just unfortunate for Duane that he was caught out in all that.
Certainly was. Already, we've been joined by a number of the drivers. If you've got any questions, mate, why don't you go and ask a few of them some questions?
I'm rubbish at these interviews, but since you've offered me the mic, I might as well give these a shot. Look, I'll have a chat to Brenton Foley first. So not, I say not the ideal weekend for you, although you did end up getting 2 wins. But did the mistake coming into that first race really sort of light the fire in your belly to push hard for the next 2?
Yeah, pretty much. I really wanted to show how fast the car really was because the first few laps in that first race felt pretty good on average tyres, and then they just dropped away completely. So I was pretty happy to finish in, I think it was third in the end after my mistake. But yeah, overall, really happy with podium all 3 races.
Yeah, and that was a good recovery to, as we mentioned on the stream, what your tyre life got down to at the fronts for that race. Obviously, at the start of the season, you'd mentioned that the way the new cars are set up and the set restrictions you've got, you were having troubles getting around the tyre life wear on these cars as the race goes on. So I suppose an update. Have you got it looks to be from the outside, but have you got a better idea on how to get these cars through a race?
I wouldn't say we're 100% there, but we're definitely making large steps in the right direction at the moment. I've had to change my driving style a little bit with this new type of car, but we're slowly getting there.
Awesome. Good news. I will hand it back to you, Lewis, now that I've done my compulsory 1 for you to grab a driver.
All right. Well, we do have Mr. Davies in here. Well, Duane, you started off the weekend in pretty strong fashion. You're showing some good pace in practice, had a good lap in qualifying, and in the end, you're able to get the better of Brenton Foley and have a comfortable race 1 win. But after that, though, things didn't quite go your way. Would you talk us through? Obviously, you're comfortable sort of in the end race 1, but then race 2 where it started just to falter a little bit.
Yeah, race 1 was good fun actually out the front. I was battling a bit of back injury, but no excuses for that. That first race I was in a bit of pain, but being out front was good. Then the second race, once Foley went off, I sort of made a few mistakes, let him get back to me. And then we had a really fun battle. at the end there, but yeah, I just didn't have anything for him in the end. He was a little bit quicker in that race. And then race 3, I got caught up in a little incident, and then yeah, I just couldn't fight back. But overall, pretty happy that I didn't lose too many points out of the weekend, so not too bad.
Yeah, still 3 podiums in the end, but after, I guess, your first 3/4 of that first lap of race 3, you must have thought that you were in a really good position to obviously take a win and take some points off Foley there.
I was very stoked because I just passed Nether and thought, right, okay, now I can get after these two. That was the hardest task. And then, yeah, went round the next corner and had the little incident, and then, yeah, that was that. So, but yeah, what can you do?
Yeah, that's it. Just one of those things that you get in racing, but still you must be pretty happy. Obviously, you do have that little back niggle that does seem to be hindering you just a little bit, but you still must be happy to take a win around one of your home circuits.
Yeah, definitely not one of my favourite circuits, but the home circuit, and it's definitely good to have a win and some podiums as well. So, thanks, mate.
Well done on a pretty solid evening.
Cheers, bud.
All right, well, we'll just yeah, I guess we'll go to Nether for this one. Nether, a bit of a interesting interesting evening for you tonight. Able to manage a podium in that final race, but those first 2 races there, I guess you're caught up in a couple of battles for almost like you were fighting for your life out there with a number of the drivers putting out very stiff opposition.
Yeah, terrible first 2 races. Riddled with mistakes. Lucky to escape with, I guess, what was it, 5th place, I think, in race 1. After all of that. Second race, definitely not happy with the driving of a few others. I've already made my comments clear on that to a few people. But race 3, I guess we can call it luck. We probably didn't deserve to get a podium in that one, but lo and behold, we came around the last corner, and it was just like Moses had parted the Red Sea, and then all the Israelites just went straight through between all the cars that were going off in either direction.
Well, I guess it's after a fairly rough first 2 races. I guess it's at least some consolation that you got a bit of karma and a bit of luck to go your way, and in the end, you did drive pretty well in that second race there, where you had some decent pace and you're able to take a pretty comfortable P2 in the end there.
Yeah, in the last race, it was a comfortable hold once everything had settled down. Once Foley had gotten past them, knew that they clearly had the pace all night. And just, there was no point in trying to fight it. It was just a case of just got a gap behind, bring it home. And I guess it leads to an interesting point. For most of the season, the guys with FCR and D2, they've been talking a lot about, the team has been learning a lot about the car. It's not a luxury that people like myself have. I was looking forward to, doing a bit more of that sort of stuff with Mike, who's unfortunately become a bit of a AWOL lately with personal issues and things, but also, Brian dropping out of the satellite team for the Alphas as well has sort of hurt it as well. So there really isn't that kind of camaraderie and people that can sit there and develop a car. It's really, I'm sort of going into each weekend a little bit blind and on the back foot. So it takes a bit longer to get up to speed for what I really want to be doing and for what I want to be challenging with. I've sort of almost resigned myself to it's a battle for 3rd place honours for me right now, halfway point of the season. I'm a bit looking at a bit of foresight. I'm sort of thinking I'm probably not going to be able to make a good fist of it in the next 5 races, so it's really just a case for me of trying to stay in P3 till the end of the year.
Well, it's still a fair effort. We can see as we look at the sort of the standings at the moment that not having that extra driver certainly doesn't help. Being a couple drives down, not able to get the input when it comes to setup, but despite that, you've still been able to manage a pretty solid season on sitting in 3rd place in the standings. You've got a little bit of a gap in front of you, but you've also got a bit of a gap behind you. So even though you might not have the ideal pace or setups at the moment, you're still putting together a pretty solid campaign. So you must be pretty happy with that at least.
Yeah, I am. It's nice to have more podiums this year than I did last year, and or to have a race win or two this year and a couple of different series under my belt's quite nice as well. Um, but look, everybody wants to set the bar high. I personally set my bars pretty high. And whenever I feel I get to that, I just feel the guys in front have just raised it another level again. So you're almost back to square one again. So in terms of a personal performance, yes, like to be a bit further, a bit closer to the guys in front, but it's an improvement on last year. So you've got to take the positives out of everything. Otherwise, you can't move forward in life. So yeah, positive to date, but would still like to be better, like a lot of other people.
Certainly, but still, once again, congratulations on the second place in that final race there, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Tough.
All right, Rhodey. Well, that just about does it for us this evening. Now, we've come up to that point in every one of my broadcasts where I've got to go over what is coming up at Automobilista Australia, and of course, I do not know what is coming up in Automobilista Australia. So I know we do have some TCAC stuff coming up again. I don't exactly know when or where.
TSAC is on tomorrow night, I believe. Again, track I'd like to know, and I think I should know, being an admin of that series, but it's escaped my mind for the moment. I think the next race. I know it is Hidden Valley. Good point. No, we've been good point. Brock has just released the new signage. We've got some advertising, new sort of sponsors, I suppose, to put on our tracks now. So that's coming up tomorrow night, and I've done exactly no preparation for it, as you can tell, not knowing what track we were using. From there, I think the next race we've got will be GD3 at Bathurst on Tuesday. And then from there, it'll be Super 2 the Friday after next.
Yep, it certainly is. And the Mercedes can go into the bin at Mount Rover. And then we have, on Friday, the 24th of April, Calder Park Raceway Super 2. I reckon there'll be some really interesting racing around there, and probably a car or two on its roof at Turn 1, a la Craig Lowndes in, I think, 99. And then on April 27th, we also have Track Day Cup from Hampton Downs. So I believe that's the first time we've ever run at that circuit. Rossi, what's it like?
I can't remember.
There you go.
It's very long. I'm not very familiar with it, but it's a different sort of track, so that'll be fun to go to, I reckon.
But there you go. Hampton Downs on for Track Day Cup round number 5, April 27, and on April 28 for TCR, it is the international round at Autodromo Riccardo Paletti, which I reckon we're going to see some door banging around that track with some medium straights, some corners. Well, you can overtake it pretty much every corner around that track. So there's certainly going to be some interesting racing around there. Anyway, from myself, Lewis Wedding, and from Benji Rodney Rhodes, hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast of the AMSOZ TCR Australia series from the Bend, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks' time from Autodromo Riccardo Paletti. See you then.